Hello, this is Asher Walden, and this is the second episode of the Empyrean Project. The Empyrean Project is a new way to teach and learn philosophy, and it's based around or organized around the Empyrean Deck. This is the set of cards that I've designed, and in this series I'm going to go through each and every card and talk about a kind of a basic, for lack of a better term, philosophical or spiritual intuition. And in this talk, I will be introducing card number 1, the Arbiter, and this will give me an opportunity to talk about what an intuition is, a philosophical intuition, and why and how the philosophical intuitions fit into how we live together. So each one of these cards is a way of experiencing something that's intrinsically important or intrinsically valuable in and for human life. In this case, the intuition or the kind of feature of value, I guess, that we're meant to pay attention to is the fact of dialogue and agreement. The way humans interact with each other, the way we live, there's a number of things about it that are sort of interesting and important. Some are similar to other animals and some are quite different. But one feature that's quite distinct is that we talk to one another. That when we want to do something or when we want to understand something, one of our primary modes is to find other people who have maybe had similar experiences and say, well, what do you think about it? I don't know if you've noticed this, but people spend an inordinate amount of time talking about the weather and talking about things that have already happened to them, like last night's game or a movie they've watched, or whatever common experience they have. They don't just have those experiences; they talk about them. Why do we do that? Why is it so important? And the answer is what we're trying to do is sort of attune our ways of thinking about these things, our ways of talking about these things, so that we can reach agreement. We cannot do anything together until we reach agreement about what we're going to do and about how we're going to do it. And there are so many aspects, 99.9% of the things that we do as humans, for one reason or another, we have to do it together. That's just sort of a kind of undeniable, kind of irreducible fact of the way we live. So the question then becomes, how do we reach agreement? So for this card, there are two kind of key words, I guess. One is accord. That's another way of talking about agreement. It's a way of talking about before we do anything, we have to agree on what we're going to do. And we may not always sort of like the agreement we've come to, right? We may have a number of people, some of whom think this is a great idea, and a few of whom are not so sure, and one or two of whom think this is a terrible idea. But I'll go along with everybody else because we live together. We live in a family. We live on the same planet. We have to live together. And so there has to be willingness to come to agreement. How do we come to agreement? Well, the way we come to agreement, I've described it in this card as precedent. And precedent in this case means principles or intuitions that we have already agreed on in the past, basically, right? So we have these intuitions of the world. We have these experience of what's valuable, what's important, what facts, I guess, of human life we can treat as a first principle. How do we agree on, how do we figure out what those first principles are? Well, we agree on them, right? So our agreements, our practical agreements are based on principles that we've already agreed to in the past, and are also based on the commitment, and this is really important, the commitment to come to agreement one way or another in the future. Why is it so important that we have that commitment? I think that the best answer is the answer that Hobbes came up with. In his work on the social contract, Hobbes really emphasized the possibility of violence. And I think that we can see that in our day and age as clearly as Hobbes did. That, for example, we have political parties that have to be cooperative, have to be willing to cooperate to pass the budget, to pass laws or not pass laws, to talk to each other about what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. And again, they may not always agree, but they have to be willing to try to agree. Why? Because if they're not willing to try, then they just won't talk to one another at all. And if they don't talk to one another at all, what's the alternative? It's violence. It's people storming the Capitol. Like it's really true that there's no middle ground there. Either we're willing to take part in dialogue, we're willing to be part, kind of broadly speaking, the democratic process by which we talk it out, we share ideas, and we come to some kind of consensus. Or if not, we take up arms. And I have never been able to find anyone who could see that there's a middle way there. There just isn't. So each card in the deck, right? I've got lots of I've got lots of sort of intuitions or maybe first principles or basic ideas. And the first principle, the very first of all the first principles, is this notion of dialogue, this notion of agreement, this notion that we have to be willing to talk it out because the alternative is worse. So that's the idea of the arbiter. That's the idea of the card. The arbiter refers not so much to a person, but an act or an activity, a process. Whatever process we desire, whether it's Robert's Rules of Order or whether it's representative democracy where we all just vote, or other, kind of other ways in which we talk to one another or communicate ideas, the bottom line, the bottom intuition is we have to be willing to try to persuade other people of that we're right, or be willing to learn from others, to be exposed to ideas that may actually change our minds. And if we don't have that willingness, it's all over. And I think it's because of that we have this sense that dialogue, that discussion, that debate, that process of coming to agreement or consensus is so important. In fact, it's so important that we experience it as of intrinsic value. How do I know that we experience it as intrinsic? Well, because we do it all the time. We're always talking. We're always sharing our judgments. We're always, I think of, in the middle of a game, the flag goes down and all the refs go into a huddle and they talk, and then they come out and the one ref comes out and says, "This is the judgment. It's fair or it's foul or whatever it is that they decide." And there's something like particularly kind of entertaining and interesting about that discussion. In fact, it's so entertaining that we continue it even after the refs. Like we say, "Oh, I think that ref was full of it," or "Oh no, I think it's right," and then we give reasons, right? We talk about it in such a way that, in principle, if we're all kind of willing to come to an agreement, these are the reasons that might help us come together. So that's what the arbiter is about, and that's what philosophy is about. Right? Because no one person is going to have all the answers. No one person is going to know the right thing to do in every situation. We have to do it together. How do we do it together? By talking it out. So good luck with that, and tune in next time. Thanks for listening.